At the KSMS Studios, 1340 AM, we have Hospital Administrator Casey Lucas with us on our Spotlight on the Salem Memorial District Hospital. We're going to talk a little bit about their Board of Directors meeting, which was held last Tuesday, right before Thanksgiving. And for some reason, Casey did not want to come in on Thursday. I don't get it on Thanksgiving morning,
Nope.
but he said something about family and food, I guess. But nonetheless, he could make it, so he's here this morning. We appreciate him coming in and talking to us. This is all brought to you by Inman Insurance, by the way, a local insurance company that supports our hospital in a number of different ways. We thank Keith and his group over there. They do a great job. And KC, it's well, you got some news last night that I mean kind of comes welcome to a lot of people about hospital employees no longer having that vaccination mandate. It's not gone, but it is on hold.
It is on hold, and that eases pressure for us.
I think a lot of
just like a
hospitals,
lot of just like a lot of hospitals. I think we scrambled to get this thing put into place. Our policy that was following the CMS guidelines, and so we were following those guidelines, putting our plan into place. Again, a quick 30-day turnaround of when those first shots had to be in arms. And so, again, there's nothing like like a week before the due date and them. And again, I'll take it the day before. I'll take it the week before because, we have some, like every healthcare facility today that falls under the mandate. We have employees that are concerned with it and would, if given their personal choice, would not take the vaccination. So this allows us to, again, probably not permanently, but at least for now, push it off. And
And there are some people medically that cannot take it. They could have a bad reaction to it, and their doctors tell them not to take it.
Yes,
and that's a good thing. And there are other people that, and the one that I always kind of question, and because there's no defined limits or sides to it, is the religious exemption. I mean, if your religion absolutely bars you from getting any kind of vaccinations, and there are some out there that do that.
Yes.
If your child's not vaccinated for school or anything else, then that's fine, and that's the way you are. I have no problem with that. But then all of a sudden to just pick one might look a little funny.
Sure.
And that's why I'm saying there was just really no guidelines on that either. So I mean it really kind of put the hospital at a real disadvantage because there's really no good timeline to discuss this. There's really no good timeline for even CMS, Missouri Hospital Association, everybody to get a real good wrap around this because it happens so fast.
Right.
And it's like, oh, here it is. You guys make your own policy and we'll go from there.
Yes. And I think every facility scrambled. There were some facilities that they've had this in place.
Right.
And so, those facilities, they were ahead of us or of facilities that hadn't had put one into place already.
Yeah.
And so I think there was hesitancy just with how new the vaccine is, and to make it mandated. Mm-hmm. I could see, and people say, well, there's a difference between the flu shot and
COVID.
the COVID vaccination, and there's a difference between the two, and in a sense, time is the difference.
Right.
There's and there's differences in how they're created and some of those things, and those are the things that people question, and so again, everybody has their beliefs and their concerns, and we want to make sure. I know SMDH wants to make sure that we're addressing all of those issues, and so, but at this point, our policy has been put on hold.
Okay.
And I think you had mentioned, there may be medical reasons, there may be religious reasons why. we had already started to receive. Actually, yesterday was our due
I was
date
going to say your
for
cutoff date.
all of
Yeah,
those
right.
exemptions to be in. And so we will continue to go through those. And
Because you guys had appointed a committee.
yes,
Right, and the
Yes.
committee was comprised of some people from the hospital, but outside people as well,
Yes.
to review these, so that it
Yes.
was just not all, somebody would say, well, it's all enclosed anyway, nobody from the outside has any input. Nope, that's not the way this committee was designed.
Sure.
So it was designed to be open and give everybody an opportunity. So, yeah, you'll still go through them, and if there's somewhere down the road it gets reinstituted, then, you'll know for sure or not.
Yeah, the committee, again, I think that committee will continue to review those. The resources, the additional resources that were part of that committee are still committed to doing that again.
Sure.
A plan had to be put in place, and that plan was put in place, and we're going to continue through that part of the plan, and really get those things lined out. If this thing were to, in a few weeks, in a month, whatever, go back into place, or we have all of that ready to go, and we can just continue on through that process.
Now, it doesn't preclude, as you had mentioned earlier, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there are some health organizations that had required on their own that their employees be vaccinated, and they
Yes.
have that right to do that.
Yes.
And so that's a different story. This was a government mandated one. That was a employer mandated one, and so that employer can make that decision.
Yes.
That it was not the hospital's decision. SMDH board of directors did not make this decision. It
Nope.
was forced upon them
Nope.
by
Through
the government.
through the conditions of participation with CMS.
Right.
If
you wanted to get paid.
Yes. Yeah. If we wanted to say a certified Medicare, Medicaid certified facility,
Right. You had to do
we
it.
had to.
Yeah.
We had to.
Yeah. So it was
comply.
It's kind of like do it or don't. But if you don't do it, you're not going to get paid. And if you do it, well, then we'll just keep things going as smooth as silk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, not at all. And I hope people understand when a mandate like this comes down, it's not easy. It's first off, everybody looks at the individuals who are making this decision, which is all the individual nurses and staff and everybody, doctors, etc., that are there. But also, the administration has to come up with a policy quickly that's supposedly going to work for everybody. And there's just not enough time, not enough good discussion to get a real good idea. But you do the best you can. Thank goodness, I think it's put on hold, and let's work it all out and find out what's the best way to do this.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
In the long run.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And we were right at 50%. As far as our employees, we were right around 50%.
I think it was 57, if I remember from the.
Yeah,
update. Yeah.
And that some of that is due to our first vaccination.
Shots, right.
Yeah, clinic. So.
All right. Very good.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
good.
so.
Okay, so when that part of our discussion would have come up later on, we don't have to make it.
Well, it is big news.
It
It is
is
big
big
news
news.
for SMDH and for really for our employees. We had
Yeah.
sent out an email early afternoon yesterday, and let everybody know that we're being put on hold again. I think if you have those exemptions, still get those in. We still want to process those exemptions, but it's being put on hold for now.
Okay,
So,
very good.
Yep.
All right, so why don't we start out talking a little bit about the audit from the
Okay.
previous month?
Okay,
And I
we can
don't
do that.
think we need to go through a ton of stuff, Casey, but we do want to touch base on the audit. Gene Nyberg from BK&D was there and via Zoom.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, but she was there, and a couple things happened. Obviously, the hospital had a large loss due to operations, basically because of supply, labor expense, and the decrease in patient income. We all know what COVID did.
Yes.
Did to any business,
Yes.
anybody
Yes.
that was a part of it kind of knows what happened. However, you got the payroll protection program that was forgiven, so that helps out a lot.
Yes.
And you got CARES Act money, and you had numerous audit adjustments, if I remember. It was quite a few of those.
Yes.
You ended up showing excess of revenues over expenses after it was all said and done of $1.1 million. And people are going to say, well, how the heck could you do that when you were losing money? Well, because this money was forwarded to you, correct?
Yes. It was CARES Act funding. It was the PPP forgiveness. It was all of those things. And yes, we go back last fiscal year, and that's when all those monies were received.
Right.
And so, if you remember, at the end of that year, we had before we had the audit, we had booked all of that income.
Right.
And so we lost nothing for last year as far as operations or as far as revenues over expenses. So when during the audit, it was brought out, or at least reviewed, and said, nope, we can't take that to income yet. We have to have guidance again.
Sure.
Only our government gives millions and millions of dollars to everybody and says, with no guidance on how it's to be spent. But
Yeah.
that's how it goes. And then how can we claim that? How can we have credit for that income? And again, in the meantime, it has to be booked as a liability because we may have to pay it back. And so lots of changes on the financials from one year to the next. We could claim it this year. We claimed every bit of it that we had. I think there was a small portion unclaimed at the end of the fiscal year, and since that time we've been able to claim that. There is just a new application that we had applied for, another couple of million, and again that's in the process of being evaluated and sent back to us. So again, more CARES Act funding to come from that. So
and a lot of it, and just in all honesty, I hope anybody that had to be at the hospital during the time of COVID, and I was one of those. You saw intense waste because of nobody knew how to handle COVID. I mean, all the different equipment the hospital had to get, all the different supplies you had to get. The problem was everybody else was trying to get them too.
Yes.
And there was,
Yes.
no way of finding these at a good cost. Everything that you were buying was at premium cost. And there's no way that anybody could have anticipated that this kind of need would be for those products that suddenly were in super high demand. Gloves and caps and, little booties and everything else that you had to have on, masks and everything else that every nurse had to have. And I can honestly tell you, I hated ringing the nurse's button, because I knew they had to put all that on to come in just to see me and take it all off and throw it away.
Yep.
And, I'm thinking, gosh, this is just not conducive to good inventory. You're just you're buying it and throwing it away. I was like, I hate to do this. But, you know what I'm saying.
Yes,
I'm thinking as a businessman, this is crazy.
Yes.
If you don't need to go in there, or you don't really need them, don't call them, man. And unless my machine was beeping or something, I'd put it off as long as I could. But usually I'm getting intravenous something.
Yes.
So I guess I shouldn't really be getting it. I'd go ahead and beep. But again, the amount of the supply cost was out of sight. Trying to get drugs in, that was out of sight.
Yes.
And then even finding it. Sometimes you had to put back order after back order and go to your third, fourth, fifth, or sixth choices just to try and find anything.
Well, and then you've got those drugs, those pharmaceuticals that are being managed by the government.
Mm-hmm.
This is how much you get.
Right.
Because we have to manage it. It has to be, And I'm gonna say I feel like our pharmacist, our materials management did such a fantastic job and continue today to do a fantastic job. I think there were a lot of things for a small rural facility that we were doing things earlier. We were getting orders. We were getting treatments started earlier than other facilities started certain treatments, which meant we had established ourselves needing X amount of product.
Right.
And so because we did that, I feel like it really helped for us to continue to get those pharmaceuticals when other facilities were finding it difficult.
However, the cost,
Yes.
you had to pay the current cost.
Yes.
Which wasn't the same as it was 5 months before.
Right.
And that's a lot of it. So a lot of the costs were very, very high, but when you look back at it, you had Medicare advance payments, which you could not use, as you mentioned, were liabilities until used.
Yes.
And then once you used them, but when they would normally reimburse you, then you could claim that as income, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a little bit different than normal, but you had
Yeah.
the cash there in case you needed it, that's a good thing. But still, when you look at it today, how does that affect your income today from Medicare and things of that nature?
Well, and one thing is some of the pharmaceuticals that I'm going to say, Regeneron, those are free to us. Okay, you had remdesivir, which was the inpatient. That was not free to us, and is very, very, very expensive per treatment. So you have a couple of things happening. Again, when someone came in for the Regeneron, we were basically charging them or their insurance the room fee and the administration of the. There was no drug cost involved, which was fantastic for us to be able to forward that on to the patient. But today when you start looking at and again, those two drugs specifically, Regeneron and remdesivir, were, again, we started very early using those. So we had established ourselves as needing this and needing these drugs. And I'm telling you, they've done wonders.
Yeah.
I feel like we've done a very good job in getting those here and getting those to patients. So I think my crew did the best they could, and it was, I feel they did a very good job. So.
Okay, so now let's wrap all this COVID around the hospital expansion.
Yes.
A change in accounts receivable. You were brought in a firm
Yes.
to try and get accounts receivable. This had to be a logistics nightmare.
Yes.
In all honesty,
Yes.
Casey, because with COVID, people aren't working. You can't go and get blood out of a turnip, right?
Sure.
That's a kind of different thing. We always hear that expression being used, but at the same time, you've got things that have been started at the hospital that, due to COVID reasons, weren't being finished or being put on hold, or you couldn't get the materials in.
Yes.
And really, I mean, it set you guys back about a year, didn't it?
Yeah,
As far as construction is
Yeah,
concerned?
it was a process that we thought we would be done by October, November timeframe. Okay.
Of 2020.
Of 2020.
Yeah.
And, I would say the majority of that, it was 6 months. It was 6 months past that by the time everything was, again, we probably have 1% that is still hanging out there, of things that will never, well, I don't know. I shouldn't say that, but
you will find as you go along.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're already going back and looking at what was done a year ago and what needs to be reworked, what didn't work out, what has went wrong in a year that it's been in use, and we're making sure that we're having all of those things. If it needs to be fixed, we're having it done because we've got a year to make sure we've got everything in line.
Absolutely. And you will find little things like that because of the separation, of the stoppage of work, and then coming back. You can't really just pick up. It's not like taking the weekend off off and coming
No,
back.
no, it's not.
You know, it's like taking 6 to 8 months off and then coming back and saying, now where were we? That'd be
Yeah,
crazy.
and the the COVID, it when it first, we're talking middle of March 2020 when this thing started, and
Basically
you're
St. Patty's Day, somewhere in that.
and you're saying, okay, we're gonna see this. We're putting certain things into place that I'm going to say surgery revenue stopped like that.
yeah.
Elective surgery stopped. Boom, all of our surgery stopped. And people, patients, they stopped going to the doctor. Okay, they weren't going to their doctor. They weren't coming to the ER. That means for us, all of that volume had shrunk to nothing. When technically we thought, oh, it's gonna be bigger volume because of COVID.
Right.
And I think we had to go through that initial, where it started on the East Coast and it made its way. It started on the
Started on
coast
both
and
coasts.
made
Yeah, it
its
always
way.
does that.
And, it took us months to get to a point where, okay, now we're seeing it. Yes, you've seen cases, but until, September, August, September of 2020,
Yeah,
we
that's when it
then,
Started
started
kicking in,
seeing that. And then, again, that surge going away and the second surge hitting us. And so, yeah.
Well, anyhow, so a lot of different things happen at one time, but a number of good things were still being brought out. Of course, we talk about the 1.1 million in excess of revenues over expenses. That's always a nice thing to have. But the long-term debt to capitalization ratio, which for years, Casey, was virtually nil.
Yes.
Went up to 26%, but that continues to go down. And for hospitals, that's not unusual at all.
Right.
You start talking about, man, you just go to St. Louis, it seems like every time you turn around, a hospital adding on or building on or changing.
Yes.
And they're always doing it. So they're always in that transition. And basically you have to be. And to keep up with different things, to keep up with technology, to keep up with advancements that are required by the government, you've got to make these changes. I can honestly say it just sometimes it seems crazy to me, some of the things that are required. But if the government says you got to have a certain type of door that goes into your long-term care, whether you had it up there or not, all of a sudden it's not a would you change it?
Yeah.
It's change it
Yes.
at your cost now,
Yes.
or have it done by yesterday.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, it's like, well, where did that come from? We didn't need that. We didn't need lights around our sidewalks for years. All of a sudden, you get that little notice that, oh, by the way, you have to have lights around your sidewalks and have them in tomorrow.
And they all have different focus areas, but at some
It
point,
is.
it's
So the hospitalizations, long-term debt to capitalization did go up, but even as we speak right now, it's already below that because
Sure.
there have been payments made. And I think it's already down to right around 20%, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken, if not lower.
yes.
Because it's, I can't even remember the last time we had that. I think it was when we had the long-term care unit, maybe when the POB 3 was being built, it got up to about 20%, I think, for a very short period of time.
Yep.
Because we had that loan come through. So that might have been the last time we had that. So that's just kind of crazy, but it was all at this time. So it really was just absolutely nuts. Now, the net operating margin, which we talked about the operating costs, we all know last year was a tough year for the hospital.
Yes.
And when you start talking minus in the operating margins, that's
Yes.
scary.
It is scary.
28.4% was down from the 0.6% that was, the minus 6% from the previous fiscal year. And that's a tough pill to swallow.
That is.
People say, well, how can you have a minus 28% and have a $1.1 million excess of revenue and expenses?
Right. Yeah.
It can happen because you were kind of helped a little bit. And, we also need to credit the CARES Act funds that the hospital was able to secure to help pay for these extra expenses that our county was
Yes.
able to get. And we want to thank them for their participation. And that's a lot of paperwork. And then people think, well, you just apply for it, you get it. I know we got a little bit to help out with some stuff, a couple $1,000s.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine what the hospital had to
Well,
submit in as far as paperwork was concerned to get
yeah,
reimbursed.
And there's going to be a special audit
Oh, yeah.
just looking at that, and so
Well,
we
you
will have
know it.
Yes, sure.
You know it. So anyhow, but the total margin for the hospital does stand 3.7% after the excess,
Yeah.
and that is above average for critical access hospitals. So you got to
It
get
is.
through this past year.
I know this. It's 2020, 2021 for us. You know, 2022 fiscal year 2022 is not looking that much different at this point. And again, I think there's more CARES Act funding coming our way, so we'll see where that puts us and how that will help. So,
But the numbers have been increasing.
yes,
They have been coming back, and
Yes.
that's the important
well,
thing.
and it's funny because I think earlier, July, August, September, we saw numbers jump back up. We're seeing them go back down a little bit, and again, what I've never seen it jump and move this fast from one month to the next. I mean, it's and I'm not saying by 50 ER visits or 25 ER visits, or I'm not saying that. I'm saying 200 ER visits from 850
yeah.
to 650 is what we're seeing.
Right.
That type of
Right.
swing is just, it's difficult to manage, to say, we've changed staffing a little bit because of we kind of looked at attrition and who left where, and where can we hold for staffing. So again, we weren't actively
Sure.
shedding employees, but when they left, we didn't rehire for certain positions. And so we were trying to hold, to say what can we do to manage expense, to because these volumes are lower. So
Yeah,
where
right.
can we trim? Where can we hold at? And as we started to see those volumes come back for those 3 months, it was okay. Now, do we need to start looking, because finding employees in this environment is very difficult.
Extremely
It's
hard.
probably the most difficult I've ever seen trying to find
It's
employees. So, especially healthcare, and now during this, and the vaccine mandate didn't help
No,
things,
gosh,
and
no.
so it's very difficult. But yes, we're stuck saying, is volume going to stay? Is it going to go away?
Right.
And in a month, we've jumped from 850 to 650 ER visits. Outpatient registrations have declined, and we're just trying to
Right.
make decisions on how to proceed. So
And that's the part of the business that doesn't change, and you have to do that. And when you start talking about some of the nurses that you've had to contract out, some of those nurses come at, depend upon the demand, as much as over $100 an hour in some cases. And in small critical access hospitals, that's
You're right.
just, you can't do it.
no, No.
Not on a continual basis, and pay and get things done. Thing is, those people they're visitors too. They're
Yeah,
not actually
yeah.
part of the community, and they come in, not to take anything away from them. They do a great job.
Sure.
However, it takes a while to fit in, and then as they're getting acclimated to the Salem Hospital, and then after maybe 9 months, 13 months, are usually on a quarterly basis, correct?
Yeah, 13 weeks.
Okay, 13 weeks. I said 13 months.
Yeah.
I meant 13 weeks.
I know.
Anyway, after 13 weeks, you might rehire them, or they may go somewhere else,
Yes.
and they start all over again.
Yeah.
That cannot be easy on those people either. But at the amount of money that they're making, you can see where the hospital would rather have an internal person working for them that works for the hospital,
Sure,
that's locally
sure.
based,
Sure.
that knows the people that are here, and that's really the ideal situation. That's what you
Yeah.
hope for.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking double that what COVID has done to those fees that we pay for agency nursing to come in
Sure.
and help has doubled during COVID.
In some
Okay.
cases, tripled, I understand. So,
Well,
maybe not in our
when,
area, but
when we say double, I already an agency nurse, you can say I'm at least paying double
Yeah.
what I pay a regular nurse.
Sure.
But then when it doubles, now I'm paying somebody 4 times
yeah.
the cost. And I felt like, while COVID is challenging and presents many challenges for employees, okay, it doesn't present any more to agency nurses that it does anywhere else.
Sure.
Obviously, smaller facilities are seeing such an influx of acuity because of this that we're having to keep patients we may not have the facility for, but you just can't find the facility to get them to.
Yeah.
And so we're keeping those patients and doing all we can. And again, I think that the stress, again, it's a challenge. It's not only, okay, resources and this and that, but as you start talking about these employees as a resource,
Absolutely.
when they have to think about, manage patients that they haven't managed before, and a patient is more than a number, it's a life. And the added stress that a life that we're used to, people leaving, people, we weren't as, again, the deaths that we experienced because of COVID was far less than a lot of facilities or a lot of communities.
Right.
But when you have none of those, or very few of those that happen, those employees, they have to deal with that. And so it's more than a patient. It's more than, hey, I've got to do, than a checklist of things to do. It's a life. And I think that's the biggest struggle, is us having to deal with the loss.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that?
And it's more personal.
Yeah,
In a smaller
it
hospital.
is.
Truly. You did get an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can get. So the hospital is in good shape. And I don't know if there's any other things you really want to pick out on that audit, because, really, it wasn't a bad audit considering the COVID situation. But yeah, there was obviously a lot of different journal entries that had to be made with COVID because of the payroll protection plan. You had to wait to see if it's forgiven. That all has to be then built back in. It starts out as a loan, then it becomes income.
Yeah, no, I think there were so many moving parts with the help or the stimulus that we received, so much for the CARES Act funding, so many moving parts with that, and really unsure as you start to utilize those funds, unsure. Again, the guidance still isn't clear as we're starting to utilize those dollars.
Casey.
But I think that was a struggle for us, and again, I think that our accounting crew did very, very well to keep things managed, and so I've got to give them kudos for that. But I think that between that, just COVID and the operations being up and down, and then I think that's my biggest concern is going forward. Okay, financially, how does the hospital do what we do with the fluctuations that we have, given some time that this additional funding, if it stops or doesn't happen,
Right.
Where does that leave SMDH? And we are actively assessing every department. We're actively assessing to see where opportunities lie that for change. If we need to change something, how do we do that? We're working with a firm, Community Hospital Consultants, and so we are just. They've been into the hospital. They've looked at all of our operations, and we are waiting to hear what thoughts they have. They do this type of assessment a lot of the time, and we are curious what their thoughts are on operations and where maybe some improvements can be made. And this is aside from BKD and what they do for us.
This is a consulting firm.
Sure. It's just an operating assessment that we're hopefully can make some decisions and decide if things need to change or what we can change.
Well, a lot of times, they say you can't see the forest from the trees. When you're in it every day, you can't see some things. Other things, you have a good idea of what's happening, but you can't pinpoint it. You don't have the time to pinpoint it. So, a lot of times it's good to have a consultant come in, and then they can verify either what you're seeing or they can put your mind at rest and say, no, that's not really happening. Don't worry about that. That part's not a problem,
Yes.
So, sometimes it's just perception. We all have every day brings a new challenge. It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know. Some days you walk in there and think everything is just going great, and then the next day, bang! You're not sure. Then all of a sudden, well, I'm not sure how they're doing, or that department, I'm not sure if they're doing as well as I thought they were doing. All right, so let's get off of the audit, and again, it was an unmodified opinion. We do want to remind everybody, and that's a very good opinion. That's the best you can get from an auditing firm, and they won't do anything different than unmodified, which basically means that the books as with a few little adjustments that they had to make, were fairly stated.
Yes.
And that's good, and that's always a good thing.
Yes.
That means you're not hiding anything.
Right.
They're not discovering. The word discover and audit is never a good thing. When they come in, they say, we've discovered. It's not going to be gold or spaghetti. It's going to be something bad, more than likely. All right, very good. Let's take a look at a summary of operations for the month of October. And the month of October, a little bit different than the month of September. September was a very busy month. October, not quite as busy, Casey.
No. Inpatient-wise, 84 admissions compared to just over 100 budgeted. So admissions down, swing bed admissions down half of what we budgeted. So again, those turn into more days because that usually has a longer length of stay. And so then as we look at inpatient census days, 244 compared to 347 budgeted. Again, I think you look at those swing bed days, and there's 60, almost 60 there. That's less. So when you start looking at those, again, same thing with med surge. Observations kind of normal for the month, and so
but swing beds have been down.
Sure.
This
during COVID.
Year.
Yeah, during COVID, just transferring patients from this facility to this facility came with its own challenges. So, whether or not they wanted to, there was, testing involved and wait times involved. And, instead of transferring and holding a patient for 10 days to test or this or that or whatever, they just kept them. Yep. And so, if we don't get those patients. We usually get those after they've had a procedure of some kind or another, coming back to do some rehab or do some continued IV treatment. So, yeah.
Okay. And that and your acute care patients per day way down in October from September.
Yes. 7, right at 8 compared to, year to date of 12.9 or 13.
It was
so
almost 16 in September. Yeah.
Yep.
Length of stay was 3.56 days, which that is above budget. So the patients you had were pretty sick.
Yes. And again, that is just of the med surge patients because that's what we want to focus on. But And so year to date, we're at 4.01, which, again, with COVID and in this time, that 4 days has been relaxed a little bit. Again, we still haven't went way past that
Sure,
4 days
sure.
of stay, but it is concerning, and you know, we've bumped up for the month of November. I know that that volume has come back a little bit. Again, I'm knocking on wood so that it continues. Well, it's over today.
I'm
so.
just glad you found wood. Not a lot of wood anymore. Pressed board maybe, but not a lot of wood. As far as the outpatient registrations are concerned, they also a little bit down. Lab tests were down a little bit. Radiological procedure about right on track. The rehabs were down a little bit. Home health down as well. And long-term care was short too. Are they still short too?
We are still short too. We are, you know, again, you're presented with many obstacles and challenges with COVID, and I think we had received a patient. I don't think the patient family was ready for the patient or the resident to be here full time, and they took the patient back out again. That's I think, right. and again with COVID, visiting requirements, it requires, you know, a lot of attention. You've got to schedule things to come in and out. You just can't walk in and out right now. Unfortunately, that's what COVID has done to us, and in long-term care facilities, that's happening all over the state, all over the nation.
It's not just Salem Hospital; it's everywhere. But the surgical procedure is right on track. So now you know, instead of that being eliminated, which it was during COVID, it's now fairly consistent. And that's the good.
Yeah, we're seeing that continue.
The ED visits in October 679. Right now, emergency room visits between 650 and 750 been pretty consistent in there, and we had that 1 month that was just way high.
Yes,
you know, but that'll happen occasionally.
Yeah.
So I won't say that was way offline. It's actually higher than the monthly budget, and just a shade under last year, one.
Sure. And we budgeted ER visits based on what we were seeing in the middle of COVID.
Absolutely.
So we didn't want to overstate or overshoot that. So for us, year to date being at 788, that's good.
Yep.
I hope we see that come back a little bit.
Yeah. So very good. So as far as the patient disposition is concerned, it's right now that we see the admissions are almost, I will say, about 40%. And some people are still against medical advice leaving, Casey. And I know sometimes they feel that I can do this on my own.
Yes.
And I mean, that's totally their choice.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we've seen people leave the hospital and then end up getting sicker.
Sure. And I think, you know, I don't know how many times we can say it, but COVID's changed a lot of what we see. We didn't see those numbers that high before.
No.
That's definitely something, whether it's the way we're treating patients or that we're having to treat patients and it takes longer. If you're approaching a patient as a COVID patient, whether or not they're positive yet, it takes time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I worry about is people putting that off, that treatment they need to stay, and putting that off and coming back in a worse situation than they left.
Well, that's just it. The treatment you need today, you're not getting. You wait another 2, 3, 4 days, it gets worse. It's like pneumonia. If you don't start getting the treatment you need right away, you're not going to end up breathing better on your own for the most part. You might, but then the chances of that happening aren't very good. So little things like that, and at this time of year, you definitely don't want to be carrying something with you.
Yeah.
Especially with Thanksgiving just over. You got Christmas coming up, and that's how things really get taken to the next level. Ambulance runs pretty much in line with the budget, I will say, and pretty much with the patients transported, etc. All pretty much on track there. I won't say anything. I don't see anything there. I should say anything, but I don't see anything there that would deter me from that. And we came again to a loss situation. We took a look at the operating statement. But that, again, when we talked about it, and Doug mentioned it in his conversation, deductions from revenue, with a lack of hospital inpatient revenue from med-surg, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And those expenses.
Yeah.
Between those two, and that kind of did you in for the month. We had a $252,000 loss from operations, and then there's still some residual tax money coming in. That'll be coming in a lot better here in
Yes.
December, January.
Yes.
However, that's still kind of rough right there. For the year, Casey, we're down $836.
Yeah.
$836,000. A lot of this is still all COVID related. And I know people say, well, can't all be COVID related, but it's still a carryover, because of the collections and trying to get the money in and the things of that nature, and the lack of, of billing at times. But the billing department's done a great job of catching up.
Yes, we're getting there.
Yeah.
I think just getting your hands around it, okay, is we're still in the process of getting our hands around everything.
Right.
But I think that as of the end of this month, we will be out of the contract with our current billers, billing company today, and there's some savings. Ongoing savings there.
Mm-hmm.
We've had to build our billing team in-house, and we've been busy building that team. So there's been some expense on both sides that we will see that January
go down.
We'll see that fall off.
Yeah.
And so in our contracted services, we will see that fall off a little bit. And so
that'll be good.
Yeah.
That'll be some savings. And doing the conversion right now, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, all at the same time.
Yes.
All at the same time. All right. Let's continue. Operating expenses. We keep talking about supplies. The supply cost still very, very, very high. And Casey, I don't see that changing in the immediate future.
Right.
I still see supply costs high if you can get them.
Yes.
Because there's still some of that. And then, pretty much everything after that is not terrible. Maintenance a little bit up a little bit. I won't say terribly, but up a little bit. So you look at the costs. What I really looked at when I looked at the supply costs, though, was the year to date. And I saw that 1.4 million.
Yep.
And it was budgeted at 1 million.
Yep.
$400,000. That's a lot in extra supply cost.
Yeah. And that's between just supplies and pharmaceuticals too.
Yeah.
So you gotta
get you.
take
But I don't
that.
think anybody really realizes how hard or how much that can just change on a market basis.
Right.
You see stocks go up and down. You don't think too much about it. Well, demand for product. If you all of a sudden have a huge spike of something somewhere else, they get that drug, and all of a sudden you're trying to get it and you can't.
Yeah.
Or if you get it, it's going to cost you 3 or 4 times what it would normally do.
Yeah.
And
then you wait an extra
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you pay the surcharge for the higher gas.
Yeah.
It's a lose-lose situation, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yep.
But it's something that has to be done. All right, the balance sheet still is a very solid balance sheet. We mentioned the long-term liabilities. Just in 1 year, the long-term liabilities have been reduced 25%. And that is the expansion of the hospital, and that is the MRI and all the high-cost leases.
Yes.
I say high-cost leases, but high capital leases, maybe it might be the better term to use there. And still very much within reason. That's why I was saying 28%, nowhere near that now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So very good. That's some good stuff right there. All right, cash flow statement. Interestingly enough, you lose $280,000 according to your statements, but your cash loss was $53,000.
Yeah.
And that is very manageable.
Yes. Was a very good month. And I say that just because I've seen the last 6 months of what we've done to cash. And so, again, that's us pulling those dollars, those stimulus dollars or the CARES Act funding dollars, and starting to use those as necessary. And so, yeah, we see that again when you look at cash on hand from the end of fiscal year 2020. You're looking at 154 days. And then at the end of this fiscal or 2021 fiscal year, looking at 85 days, and that's down to 53. And it's concerning, very concerning for us. But, we do note that the average critical access hospital, average Missouri critical access hospitals is at 53. So, yeah, I think that is concerning, and there's no other way to say it. That those things have to be. That is why we are assessing operations. That's why we look at that. That's why we're pulling someone in to take a look at that.
Reassess your operations.
Sure.
Always. I mean, you just can't say, well, we've done it this way for 50 years. It should work. Well, 50 years ago, they didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
30 years ago, they didn't have cell phones. I mean, you start thinking about that. They didn't have big screen TVs. They didn't have Dick Tracy watches. I guess they did back in the 30s because they used to have one. Do you remember?
Yep.
Yeah, but now that's actually real. So
yes.
Anyway, CD schedule. There's still $2 million in. Now that's about as far as you can go with it because you're not getting much out of that.
No.
And then the aging accounts receivable has continued to go down, and this is the very, very big. Because the quicker you can get that money back in that you bill out, the quicker it comes back in, the better off the hospital will be. Last October, 100 days.
Yes.
This October, 65. 35 days, that's a month.
Yes.
Month plus you're cutting off. And Casey, that's the accolades there are just fantastic. And even from September to 75 days, down 10 days, that's a third of a month. That's huge.
Yes. Yeah, it's they've done well.
Uh-oh.
Did that go in?
It's right.
Yeah, that's all right.
Oh, man.
You can have that.
All right. Okay, so the chief nursing officer, Ashley Sullivan, gave the med-surg staffing by patient acuity, and these are nice graphs to look at because you can see exactly day by day how busy it was.
Yes.
In the acuity, and how some of the days are highly acuity. The acuity is very high. The average acuity per day was 20, and the average patients per day were 8.
Yeah.
That's still a lot of patients.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not overwhelming amount of patients.
Sure.
But average acuity at 20 means that they're sick, and they need some assistance. So
yes.
Yeah, very good. Latter part of the we have seen that the staffing though has dropped off a little bit.
Yes.
Since COVID hit, and you can see that in the last over a year, a little year and a half from July of last year, when everything was just shut down.
Yes. And I'm going to say May of this year, I believe it was May, all of our agency staffing, we had phased out all of the agency staffing. We are now, again, these shortages, and as you can see from this 25-month average that we've got here, we were staffing 4 nurses a shift, and that has changed to 3 nurses a shift. And again, there was a time even with 3 nurses per shift, we were still hitting some agency, getting some agency help. So trying to set that up to
keep that in-house.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. All right, Denton County COVID-19 update, kind of some older numbers now.
Yes.
A little bit more current last week, but as of the 22nd of November, there was 10 current active COVID cases and 9 probables, and 29.8% of the residents being completely vaccinated. I think that's gone up now over 30%, I believe, and that's good. And I think it's almost 35 now have initiated the series of getting vaccinated.
Yes.
So, that's a good thing. So the hospital knows that. As of the meeting date, we had last week. 57% of the employees had at least started.
Yep.
Right. So, not as important as it was yesterday in the morning.
Yes. Yeah.
But still, it's nice to know a lot of the staff have taken that step.
Well,
and vaccinated.
and we had planned to at least to be right at about 70% vaccinated, and I think the question was this other 30%. You know, what at that time?
How are you going to make
Yeah,
that up?
how's that going to happen? What, are there exemptions in there? Are those resignations? What are those? And there was at the time there was a kind of a division of those. Some were resignations, some were this, and at this time there's been this good news came out yesterday, and some of those resignations have been rescinded, and so we can see that, and we hope to keep those employees.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's hope that common sense prevails in D.C. I know that's asking a lot,
Yes.
but let's hope it does.
Yes.
Okay, let's move forward to the. Anything else you want to talk about
Nope.
on the COVID-19
No.
update?
No.
All right, very good.
I think we beat that.
I think, yeah, COVID has had enough.
Yes.
All right, Hospital Foundation. They're going to have a meeting January 5th, but no Salem stars are going to be dancing
No.
this year or even next year. However, I was going to talk to Jason. Maybe in the summer. The gym is air conditioned.
Sure.
Maybe it might be something to look at. Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm just saying. Maybe.
No, I mean, I think what we, you try to not hit. I mean, our community is awesome to support
Sure.
our functions, and so, the way they support the golf tournament
Sure.
and all of that, you just try and not hit them all at one time,
Right.
and try to spread it
Well,
out.
meant
So I mean,
like
yeah,
late summer, right before
Yeah.
school, like first week of August or something in there, when most
Yeah.
people have their vacations over. Maybe. I mean, it's just something to consider. I hate to see it go 2 years without being
right,
held.
right,
So.
yeah.
And I think people are anxious to see it again. I really do. I think they enjoy it. And it's always a good crowd. So.
It's always a good crowd.
Yeah, always a good crowd.
Always been
And
a
then the
good.
distance learning and telemedicine program grant has kind of run into a little snafu with some schools that have had issues in the past, right?
Yes, and I think just like the hospital is dealing with staffing and workload, I think everybody is, and so we've tried to address, and we're going to continue to try and hope that all of the schools, kind of the schools included in this,
Right.
has changed a little bit as we went on. And we've asked for a change in scope. You have to, when you change things like that, you have
Sure.
to request a change in scope. And we still haven't heard back about that change in scope, but I'm assuming it will be approved. The issue is that when you get this grant, you have to spend a certain amount of it, or the grant just doesn't. It just
work.
it just doesn't work. And so, as we start looking at this again, I think we want to offer this because I think we have an idea of how well we could offer this. I think that there are some schools that question whether they can or cannot add this, because it is an addition of responsibility and addition
Has to be a staffing person there.
of duties that,
Yep.
that somebody's going to have to learn and do and be available for, and it's going to take time. So I totally understand that. It's unfortunate that it's happened at this time, and we couldn't get that implemented. I think that, again, we're not saying it's over today. We're just saying it's not going in the right direction, and we hope we can change it. But I do think that it would give resources to the surrounding schools, the R80 and all of the rural schools, all of those, and a couple bunker viburnum. There's definitely we'll add those resources, and if we can diagnose something over the phone and keep a student from having to make that trip all the way to our clinic, then that's what we want to do. And so I think that those are good resources. It's a good program. And I know that, well, my thought is this, that we are in this community. I know that there has been schools that have dealt with facilities that were not in this community. And so I just think there's a different commitment level to all of those schools from different facilities. There's a different commitment level. And so I'm convinced that our commitment level will be where it needs to be to make this thing successful.
But they still have that sore from
Sure,
previous.
sure,
So
sure.
You understand both sides of it.
Sure.
And it's like, well, we got burned once. I don't want to get burned again.
Well, and I would say that the biggest, they're concerned with that, but I think the biggest thing is the staffing and the additional workload that it would put on. I mean, if the last facility that was supporting their telehealth really didn't understand the I guess the challenge with that, because they really didn't have the support they needed. And so again, we would love to give that support, but
well, it'd be nice.
Yes.
It'd be beneficial to schools, absolutely, no doubt about
Yep.
that. All right, let's talk about that Cerner conversion. Well, we had a little glitch in the system. We were going to go live in November. That didn't happen. We had to do a little backtracking and reassessment, did we?
yeah. No,
Most
I'm going to say about 2 weeks before our go live schedule, we discovered through testing some errors in when they were programming
Right.
the patient accounts portion of Cerner, that they had some turnover of employees in that area, and I think there was just some miscommunication of at what stage things were at, and so I think somebody exited, somebody entered, and they didn't necessarily pick up where the other one left off, or there was some miscommunication about that. And it got to the point where we were doing final testing on some things, and we were noticing it wasn't reacting the way that we thought it should react.
Yeah.
And so we brought it to their attention, and they said, well, yeah, we'll check into it. And a day later, we get a call that says, we need to talk. So I think any conversion like this, and I'm going to use BKD as our auditors. They said, if it's not exactly right, you have to put it off. Now, we didn't have to put it off. Cerner put it off, which I thank them for stepping up and saying, we can't allow this to happen. They could have just said, well, yeah, we'll fix it. We'll get it there.
You've gone through that before, haven't you?
Yeah. And it doesn't work. But but I'm glad we all reacted the way we needed to react, and they're postponing it. Our new go live is March 14th. And so we will put that in place, and I know that there's additional testing that we're going to do in January, and so we're just trying to get prepared for that, and probably continue to test all we can.
I'm sure.
I mean,
every day.
We talk to directors and the subject matter experts and the super users. Test all we can. Make sure that every line item that you could charge for in your department has been entered, and we're making sure that charge is showing up, and all those things. And then the next level is taking a whole patient account that's been put through all the charges, and then billing it and seeing that we can send it out to our clearinghouse, and that
Right.
the clearinghouse can get us a payment back,
Right.
and we can post everything, and everything's working. So, but that last part, sending something out to our clearinghouse and getting payment back, that's where our issues came into play. That, hey, these things are sitting in a status of
Hold.
processing.
Yeah.
Processing. Yeah.
That's not
So,
processing does not work. Doesn't
No.
get you paid very well.
No.
Not very well. So okay, so March 14th will be that day that
Yep.
they will go live, and so got a lot more testing to do. And then of course you've got a CLIA survey that came in and kind of was talked a little bit about at the last meeting, and then your plan of correction has been submitted.
Mm-hmm.
Have you gotten
Yes.
any word back on that yet? You thought you might hear this week.
Have not heard back
Okay.
yet.
Okay. Very good. And the A&J consultants that Casey's already talked about,
Yeah.
and they were there. All
They
right.
are here today. So
They are here
they
today?
were here yesterday, and they're still
here
here
today.
today. Probably be this whole week, and setting up all of our lab equipment and getting some things put into place. So
Very
help
good.
us to do some monitoring.
Very good.
Yeah.
Election filing for District 3. This is the one currently held by Dennis Feibelman, and pretty soon you'll have sign-ups.
Yes.
Board
Yes.
sign-ups.
December 7th, and they go through December 28th.
So that's
That's
3
a
weeks
yep.
shorter than it used to be. So it used to be a 6-week
Yes.
sign-up. So,
Yeah.
yeah, 3 weeks shorter. So you do need to sign up the administration office at the hospital, correct?
Yep, and it opens at 8 a.m. Usually we have somebody there 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And so anytime between December 7th and December 28th, less weekends.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
and holidays.
And if you're not quite sure where District 3 is, and I'm not dare going to try and explain where it is, because it's a little different, you can go by the hospital administration
Yes.
office and you can take a look at the map,
Yes.
because that'll give you a
Yes.
better idea. I would hate to try and give those borders.
Yes, it is.
But yeah, it's a little bit different. It's
It's
squirrely.
it's
It's
a
big,
big,
yeah.
district. Yeah.
But it is squirrely. So if I wouldn't tell you across the street, you might be in a different district on that line.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yep.
crazy. All right. So we're not going to even worry about the
Yep.
vaccine mandate. They don't
Right.
have to worry about that. So we moved the date up for the hospital board meeting in December.
Yes, December 14th, 6 p.m.
Okay.
in the hospital library.
Very good. And anything in closed session, sir?
I don't believe so.
It's been a week, I know.
I know.
Forget all that.
No.
Okay.
No.
Very good.
Oh,
Oh.
yes.
Oh,
yes. Yes.
You're gonna
I should
start
have wrote
paying
that.
the media
I should have
double?
wrote that down. This isn't the paperwork I had then. It's a different paperwork. But we chose to change our hospital insurance, okay? The broker and the TPA, or the third-party administrator of our insurance. Now we're keeping the same network,
Okay.
but we chose to change that from broker. Our current broker is Wall Street,
Okay.
and we changed to not
Not out of Rolla?
out of Jeff City.
Yeah, but they had
Yeah.
they used to have an office.
Yeah. So, and the TPA from MedPay to Key Benefit.
Is that going to save some money?
Oh, we hope so. Yeah, they've got. We're excited. I think they've got some management tools that will help us to manage some claims.
Okay.
It will. I'm sure there's going to be a time where we have to get everybody on board, and if you have a chronic condition, how you manage that will need to be
Sure.
managed a little bit closer. And I think by doing that, they've seen claims decrease, and that's you know, when we look at what we've seen over the last couple of years of claims, yeah, we just need the extra help in managing that. So
Okay.
we hope to see that savings. I do know pharmaceuticals as well. There's some savings there as well. So,
All right.
Yeah.
Well, very good.
yeah.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you, Casey, for coming in. Again, we want to remind everybody this interview is brought to you by Inman Insurance, proud supporter of our Salem Memorial District Hospital, and we
Yes.
thank them for doing that. And Keith and the gang over there do a tremendous job. So I want to thank them for that. I want to thank Casey for coming in, spending some time with us. And normally I'd wish him a happy Thanksgiving, but
Yes.
I don't have to worry about that. I'm sure he had plenty. But we'll be visiting with Casey before the Christmas holidays.
Yes.
So we really appreciate him spending the time and making the effort to get in here. And before the end of November, we didn't have much time left. This is it.
I know. We got it in.
We got it in.
All
We got it in. And we really do thank him for accommodating us and keeping you informed about what's going on at your hospital and getting the good news about the vaccine mandate. That's a good way of responding
Yes.
to the government. Yeah, and I knew the Attorney General had filed suit on that. I was
Yes.
just, him, and I know at one time 17 other states had done the same thing. So it was pretty serious, and I think they understood the gravity of the situation and how it would
Yeah.
affect, especially small hospitals.
Rule.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's really been a challenge, and it would be a challenge, and it will still be a challenge if it continues to move forward. We still